possibilities. I think, John.
We're just spend a couple of minutes going over what we're doing with the Gulf, making sure we're comfortable. Jack and I and a few people looked at pictures last night.
Henry Muller runs this magazine with the hope that he is going to be fed, just a fountain of ideas that springs up from the field. Correspondents, stringers, whatever, writers, editors, people feeding ideas out of which he can pick and choose, like a Chinese menu.
I'd like to do the Soviet role ahead of the Mubarak interview.
Time stories stand out, I think, because they have that distinctive tone. The person, the particular correspondent, the eye on the scene coming through and telling you, here's what happened, and beyond here's what happened, here's what it seems like it means.
I looked at a little what George wrote last night. He has a wonderful lead of about 50 lines that...
Our stories vary in the way they're constructed, and I think that makes for better stories and more diversity in the magazine.
After they've watched news and television, after they've read in the newspapers, then they come to us.
As long as the world continues to become more and more complicated, and as long as so much information reaches people in sound bites, there is going to be a need for a weekly perspective. Here's where we stand on the cover. This is the best amazing picture we got out of yesterday's take. Is Dean still working on a Mubarak interview?
Yeah, he's pushing but for this week, it's just not going to, it's Friday over there and everything stops.
Yeah. Does he think there may be a chance for next week?
Yeah. But I do remember him calling me on a
that side, isn't it?
on a Thursday night and saying, look, I've got a shot at seeing Mubarak on Saturday morning. Can we get it into the magazine?
Well, they don't have it yet here in Cairo, but that doesn't really surprise me very much. Time magazine. Hello. Sahir. مين؟ مين بيتكلم؟ ديوة. Dean, it's Mohammed Abdelmanem.
Hello. Yeah, Mohammed. You think it's going to be tomorrow? Here? Alex, so what do we need to do to get ourselves up there?
Mubarak is in the very center of the Arab effort to confront Saddam Hussein, and Dean felt that it would be an important addition to our journalism to get Mubarak himself to talk about what he was up to.
Mr. President, my pleasure to see you again.
Mubarak is the man who took the lead in the first Arab League meeting. Egypt took the lead to condemn the invasion.
I'm reminded of the first interview I had with you. It was in 1985 during the Akil Laro crisis.
Akil Laro, yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
And I had an interview with you, and so did Diane Sawyer at CBS.
Yes.
She was prettier than I am.
Yes.
You interviewed him before?
No.
Oh, you have not?
I've met him
Well,
before.
he may surprise you with how animated he is.
We have good relations with America, have good relation with the Soviet Union, we have good relation with Europe, with the Eastern Bloc, with the African continent, even with the Arab world. It doesn't mean whenever I respond to any of these countries that I'm a puppet for them. Egypt is Egypt. Egypt will never be a puppet for anybody.
New York's story is not just New York's story, it's America's story. And what is happening here is the vanguard of the bad news in some ways. And New York is again at the cutting edge. It's at the cutting edge of what is happening to urban America. And I think this is an urban society. The majority of us live in urban centers. And therefore what happens to New York matters to every single American.
Finally here this evening, dangerous times in New York City.
Random violence has taken the life of a young tourist from Utah here in the city
Bronx,
tonight.
a promising young teenager lost his life for $1.
A stray bullet hit that little boy in the stomach, fired from dueling drug dealers.
Now this week's Time magazine cover story proclaims the rotting of the Big Apple, with the results of a poll confirming a sense of the public's hopelessness in this city's future. Joining us this morning are Janice Simpson, Time magazine's deputy bureau chief for New York, who co-wrote the article in Time this week.
But Joelle and the group down in the New York bureau put together a suggestion this summer that said, look, we've got to pull this thing together. There's a story to be told here about New York City and what's happening.
This is a real one. If you could choose where you live, would you live in New York City? That's a real one. It won't be here, but it's a real one.
And that's, most of the people who are involved in this story are New Yorkers. We live here in town. We're affected by the events that we're describing.
People still live in the city.
I'm not sure this really fits in, but it said fits in because it's great.
Now, the guy who was picking the garbage out of the can.
Yeah, well, no, that's here, but we felt this was stronger.
Yeah.
What's new about the New York story is that the reporter wrote the story. One of the reporters wrote the story. That's essentially that on the scene sense is what's new about that, the way we did that cover story.
Really? You wouldn't live anywhere else?
No.
Your husband was mugged here 7 times, and you still live here in New York?
We don't hate New York, or we're not out of love with New York, or we're not writing a story about our loss of affection for New York.
We're grieving.
We're saying Big Apple's rotting.
This captures the congestion,
Well, it sort of captures the idea of like people are trying to lead normal lives, but you know,
and you're just
just there
trapped.
beneath the surface.
We produced a cover on New York City the way we produce most everything in the magazine, by going out and reporting the place, by looking at it, smelling it, and trying to understand it, and then asking intelligent people to reach conclusions about it. But anyway, in case anybody wants to know, I live in New York City. I've lived here for 10 years, and I think that the cover story was right on the mark.
I think if a journalist and if a publication can encourage people to think and assess their society, then I think we have the most wonderful job in the world.
Well, I wouldn't be here if I weren't enjoying it, and I think that's the main thing. It's, despite the flies and the pollution and all the other frustrations, the camels, it's a great life.